New York at 2:03 a.m. was a different kind of darkness, the kind that swallowed even the tallest buildings in silence, leaving only the glow of Manhattan bleeding through the clouds like a distant reminder that the city never really slept even when he did not. Ethan Vale walked into his penthouse with the heavy stagger of a man who had spent too many nights fighting losing battles. His tie hung loose around his neck, his fingers trembling as he pulled it off, because 32 hours without sleep did not just drain him, it hollowed him out. His eyes were bloodshot rimmed with the raw ache of exhaustion and defeat after the disastrous meeting that officially marked the collapse of the biggest deal of his career. Investors were pulling out, lawyers were circling the company he built from nothing was teetering, and he held all of it alone, just like he held everything else in his life. He shut the door behind him with a soft thud, one that echoed more loudly in his chest than in the penthouse, and walked toward the dimly lit kitchen, hoping to at least splash water on his face before his body gave up on him. He did not expect to see anyone awake. He did not expect light in the kitchen, and he definitely did not expect her. Lily Hart, 24 years old, and only 2 weeks into working as the evening maid, was standing on a small step stool, reaching up toward the highest shelf. The soft yellow under-cabinet light washed over her neck, casting a warm glow along her collarbone and catching in a single strand of hair that had fallen loose from her bun. She wore a thin white t-shirt and simple black lounge pants. Nothing remarkable, nothing provocative, but somehow more disarming than anything Ethan had seen in years. She looked peaceful, grounded, completely unaware that her presence shifted something inside him that he did not have the strength to analyze. He froze for a fraction of a second, then turned away instantly. A conditioned reflex, a man running from the possibility of misunderstanding, from danger, from the idea that he could want anything for himself. But the exhaustion made him clumsy. His hand brushed a glass on the counter, sending it rolling off the edge. It hit the floor and shattered the sharp crack, cutting through the quiet apartment. Lily turned, not startled, simply aware, as if she had sensed his presence before he spoke. Her eyes found him immediately steady, unflinching. She stepped down from the stool with a calmness that felt out of place in the home of a man whose world was collapsing. She approached him slowly, stopping when only 2 feet separated them, the city light falling across her face, making her expression unreadable, almost cinematic. "Mr. Vale," she said in a low, even voice, "if you want to see, just say it." The words hit him harder than exhaustion ever could. His breath caught in his throat like a punch he did not see coming. His pulse thudded once, twice, too loud, too heavy. He stared at her, struggling to swallow, because no woman had ever spoken to him like that. Not in a tone that was neither flirtation nor accusation, something deeper, something unsettlingly perceptive. He opened his mouth a fraction, confused, offended, embarrassed, wanting to deny the implication, even though he did not understand what implication she meant. The light from the skyscrapers reflected in her eyes, making them shine, not with seduction, but with something painfully human, understanding, empathy, maybe recognition. She did not look embarrassed by her words. She did not look like someone teasing him. She looked like someone telling him the truth. Ethan felt heat climb his neck, not desire but shame, because for a second, just one small second, he had looked at her, not with hunger but with longing, the kind of longing that came from being unbearably alone. He stammered the words, catching on his dry throat. "Why would you say something like that to me?" Lily inhaled softly, her breath barely visible in the dim light. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but sharp enough to cut through every layer of armor he wore. "Because you look like a man who is drowning and too proud to ask for help." Ethan felt something inside him crack so subtly. He almost missed it, a shift, a fracture, a moment where the weight he carried slipped just enough to reveal the human underneath. No one saw him. No one ever saw him. But she did, in a single sentence. She saw everything he fought to bury. The kitchen fell silent around them, the city humming far below the world. Outside, unknowing, while inside, his penthouse Ethan Vale, billionaire empire builder, single father and man on the edge, stood utterly still, breath lodged in his chest, undone by the one person he never expected to notice him. Cut. Title sequence. Ethan Vale had been called many things in the headlines over the past year, but nothing sank its teeth into him. Quite like the newest title plastered across every financial news site, the falling king, the phrase clung to him with cruel accuracy. Because kings were not supposed to crumble, kings were not supposed to drown, kings were not supposed to stand alone in a glass tower while the world watched and waited for them to fail. Yet here he was, a billionaire with 8,000 employees depending on him, a company on the verge of collapse, and a 6-year-old boy who looked at him every morning as if he wanted to ask a question he was too frightened to voice. Noah had always been observant, almost too observant for a child his age. He did not speak much since his mother died 2 years earlier, but he noticed everything: the dark circles under Ethan's eyes, the untouched plates on the dining table, the way Ethan often forgot to breathe when stress overtook him. The boy would sometimes sit quietly near the window, clutching his worn stuffed rabbit, as if waiting for something or someone to bring life back into the apartment. Ethan saw it all, and it broke him because he knew he was failing at the one thing he refused to fail at: being enough for his son. Every morning he woke up before dawn after another sleepless night and crossed the silent penthouse with the hollow determination of someone who no longer knew where strength came from. He slipped his wedding ring back onto his finger, even though it no longer held the warmth of a hand he used to intertwine with. He still kept it hidden, pushing his hand into his pocket whenever anyone approached, as if letting the world see the ring meant exposing the scar beneath it. No one noticed that detail, no one except Lily, but that realization would not come until later. At the office, the air always smelled like cold coffee, broken deadlines, and desperation. Board members argued over investor exits, employees whispered behind closed doors, and reporters camped outside his building like vultures waiting for him to admit defeat. Ethan could feel the pressure in his bones, as if the city itself were pressing down on his chest, every step he took heavier than the last. He lived in a world of numbers, losses, and strategies, yet no amount of logic could erase the truth that gnawed at him. He was running on fumes, clinging to responsibility, because letting go would mean facing the emptiness beneath it. His executives never saw the tremor in his hands when he signed paperwork, or the way his vision blurred when he blinked too long. They saw the iron facade, the hardened jawline, the billionaire who refused to bend. No one ever asked if he slept. No one asked how he was doing. No one asked if he was scared. They assumed he was carved from something stronger than human, because wealth had a way of disguising fragility. In the media, Ethan was a symbol, a monolith, a cautionary tale about power and pressure. But symbols did not bleed, symbols did not grieve, symbols did not lie awake until 4 a.m., listening to the echo of a voice that once told him she loved him. Symbols did not carry a little boy to bed after nightmares because the child was too afraid to sleep alone. Still, even in the most painful nights, Ethan refused to break. Not because he was strong, but because he did not know another way to exist. The world only wanted his victories, not his vulnerability. Then came the legal scandal that tightened the noose around his company's neck. A former partner filed a lawsuit accusing Ethan of negligence in a pharmaceutical investment, and although the accusation was false, public opinion rarely waited for evidence. Billions in valuation evaporated overnight. 3 major investors withdrew. Stock plummeted. His board demanded a scapegoat. His lawyers demanded impossible hours. His son demanded nothing, which somehow hurt the most. And through it all, Ethan kept moving, like a man marching through snowstorm after snowstorm, pretending the cold did not touch him. His penthouse staff respected the boundaries he did not vocalize. They tiptoed around him, stayed out of sight, and treated him like a fragile storm cloud, always ready to burst. But Lily was different. She moved quietly, but not fearfully. She worked diligently, but not nervously. She stepped into the penthouse like someone who saw a wounded animal, not a billionaire. And for reasons Ethan could not explain, that unsettled him more than any lawsuit ever could. One evening while he returned from another ruinous meeting, he caught her glancing at his left hand, her eyes lingering on the faint outline where the ring had rubbed against his skin. She said nothing. She never asked about the ring, never pitied him, never treated him like a man broken beyond repair. She simply noticed, and that alone was dangerous. People did not notice Ethan Vale. They noticed his money, his downfall, his name, his company, his failures. But Lily noticed him, the man beneath the weight, the father beneath the exhaustion, the human beneath the armor. He felt it in the way she paused when he walked into a room, as if adjusting not out of fear, but out of awareness. As if she sensed the unspoken pressure wrapped around him. He felt it in the way she placed his dinner near the warmer, knowing he would forget to eat until late. He felt it in her small nods of acknowledgement that held no judgment, only recognition. He felt it in the way her eyes softened when she caught him staring into nothing for too long. Something inside him shifted because being noticed was more terrifying than being ignored. At least when he was invisible, no one saw him breaking. But Lily saw. She saw too much, and Ethan hated it almost as much as he needed it. That was the bitter truth eating away at him, the truth he could not run from. For the first time in years, someone saw Ethan Vale, not the falling king, not the billionaire, not the widower, not the father, clinging to sanity by a thread, but the trembling human man, standing behind all of it. And that was why, the night she said those words would haunt him forever. Lily Hart had never imagined her life would lead her into the penthouse of a billionaire, let alone one who looked like he had forgotten how to breathe without permission from the world. She had grown up far from luxury, far from polished marble floors and glass walls that showed the entire skyline of New York. Her world had been smaller, a quiet apartment with peeling paint, a mother who tried her best, and the soft hum of second-hand appliances. Nothing in her life had ever been extravagant, except for the weight she carried on her shoulders. Her mother's illness had rewritten everything. Hospital bills piled so high, they looked like a staircase to nowhere. And for 2 years, Lily had worked 3 jobs at once to keep the lights on and medication stocked. She cleaned apartments, waited tables, and took night shifts at a small laundry service until her hands smelled permanently of detergent and fatigue. When her mother died, Lily did not cry immediately. She stood in the silent apartment, surrounded by the ghost of her mother's breath, and simply felt the ground vanish beneath her. It was only later, when she folded the last shirt her mother ever wore, that the tears came quiet, relentless, unstoppable. She had been on her own since then, 24 years old, and older than most people, twice her age, because grief had a way of aging you faster than time did. People often misunderstood her silence, mistaking it for shyness, when in reality, she simply did not trust easily. Love had never been safe for her, not the fragile, chaotic kind that left you shattered. Her virginity was not a symbol of innocence, but of self-preservation. She guarded herself because she had watched her mother give every piece of her heart to people who did not stay. So Lily stayed behind, invisible, surrounded by the walls she built to protect what was left of her. The job at Ethan Vale's penthouse had not been her first choice. She only applied because it paid better than the other cleaning positions, and she needed to reduce her workload before sheer exhaustion took her down. She did not know who he was at first, not until she Googled his name on the subway home and found page after page of articles labeling him the Ice Machine and the Iron Mind, and more recently, the Falling King. None of those descriptions prepared her for the man she met. When she walked into his penthouse for the first time, she expected hardness, arrogance, entitlement. Instead, she saw something that made her stop in the doorway. A man who looked like he had not slept in years standing in front of a massive window. His shoulders drawn so tight they looked carved from stone. He thanked her when she arrived, which surprised her because wealthy clients rarely did. His voice was low, steady, but carried the faint tremor of someone barely holding himself together. She noticed everything, even when she pretended she did not. She noticed the way he always massaged the center of his forehead when he was overwhelmed. She noticed how his hands shook when he poured coffee. She noticed the scars of exhaustion under his eyes, the kind that did not come from one bad night of sleep, but from hundreds. She noticed how often he forgot to eat, leaving full meals untouched, until she quietly stored them away in containers she knew he would never open. She noticed the ring he still wore, though he kept it hidden, as if ashamed not of the loss, but of the vulnerability it implied. She noticed how the entire penthouse, though expensive and immaculate, felt empty like a museum exhibit instead of a home. Noah was the only warmth in that place, a little boy with big brown eyes, who always peeked at her from behind door frames. She adored him immediately, in the quiet way people who have known loss recognize it in others. Noah did not speak much, but one afternoon he approached her, holding his stuffed rabbit, and placed it on the counter next to her cleaning supplies. It was a silent offering, the kind children gave only when they trusted someone. She never forgot that. She also noticed something else, something she did not expect. Ethan Vale never raised his voice. Not at her, not at his staff. Not even when he was drowning in crisis. His silence was not cold, it was weighted like a man, too tired to speak because words cost energy he no longer had. She saw through him, not because she was intuitive, but because she too had worn masks to survive. She recognized the slump in his shoulders, the way he braced his hand against the counter when he thought no one was looking, the way grief quietly built a home inside a person. She had lived those things. She knew how heavy they were. But Ethan did not know she saw him. He did not know she stayed an extra 10 minutes after her shift, just to make sure he had eaten something. He did not know she rearranged small things in the penthouse to make his routines easier, like placing his favorite mug closer to the machine, or setting the lights on dimmer settings so the harsh brightness would not intensify his headaches. She never told him she noticed the tremor in his hand when he lifted his phone. She never told him she recognized the quiet panic in his eyes when Noah coughed too hard. She never told him she knew what it felt like to hold so much responsibility your ribs ached. She simply watched, adjusted, cared in silence, because she knew better than anyone that some people do not want to be saved, they only want to be seen. But the turning point came when she saw him almost faint one afternoon while reaching for a file on the high shelf. He steadied himself on the counter, but the world clearly tilted beneath him. Lily stepped forward, instinctively, resting a hand on his forearm without thinking. Ethan stiffened as if no one had touched him in years. It lasted only 3 seconds, but in those 3 seconds, she felt his pulse racing under her fingertips, and something inside her shifted with startling force. She stepped back immediately, murmuring an apology, but that moment stayed with her because for the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of her, not fear of the world, but fear of falling apart in front of someone who might actually care. And caring was dangerous. She tried to distance herself after that, tried to keep her walls strong. But the more she saw him, the harder it became. Because every day he began to look less like the billionaire the world assumed him to be, and more like the kind of man who had been abandoned by everyone except the burdens he carried. When she looked at him, she did not see power or wealth. She saw a man with a fractured heart, a man hanging on by threads, a man who needed someone not to fix him, but to stay long enough for him to breathe again. And that was the thing that frightened her the most, because Lily Hart had never saved anyone before. But she could not shake the feeling that she might be the only person left who could save Ethan Vale from himself. Lily never set out to break through Ethan Vale's walls. She did not even think she could. Men like him did not let people in. They let people orbit around them like distant moons. But they never opened their own gravity. Yet somehow, without meaning to, she became the quiet force that began reshaping the air inside his penthouse. It started with the smallest gestures, barely noticeable, in a place full of polished steel and cold glass. She began arranging his workspace in a way that made sense, creating a path through the chaos he had grown numb to. His files were always stacked in rigid piles, scattered everywhere, as if organization required more emotional effort than he possessed. Lily approached the mess, gently not erasing his system, but smoothing it into something breathable. She placed the most urgent documents on the left, next to the pen he reached for most often. She moved the half-empty coffee cups to the sink, so he would not look at them and be reminded of late nights he tried to forget. When he entered the office the next morning, He paused for half a second, his eyes scanning the new order. He said nothing, and she did not expect him to, but something in his shoulders softened. That was enough. Every night, Lily made a cup of chamomile tea and left it on the warmer near his desk. Chamomile was her mother's remedy for exhaustion, a ritual she had inherited from a woman who had tried to give comfort even when dying. Lily always placed the cup where Ethan would see it, without being forced to acknowledge its purpose. Sometimes he drank it, sometimes he forgot. Either way, she never stopped making it. She also learned the rhythms of his exhaustion. She noticed he often fell asleep on the living room sofa when preparing for late-night calls, so she left a warm folded blanket on the armrest. The first time he noticed, he hesitated touching it with the same care one might use when handling something fragile. Another morning, she saw him rubbing his temples after a conference call. She remembered her mother once used warm towels to help migraines, so she placed a small heated cloth beside the sink with no explanation. He found it, he used it, and for the first time in weeks, he had a moment without pain. Their interactions remained minimal, yet charged with something unsaid, something growing beneath the quiet routine. Ethan began noticing her too, not in the way men notice women, but in the way weary souls recognize a presence that does not demand anything in return. One night he came home later than usual, his suit jacket soaked from a passing drizzle. Lily was finishing the dishes when she turned and saw him standing there dripping tired and strangely lost. Their eyes met. She cleared her throat softly and said, "There are towels in the laundry room that I warmed earlier." For a moment he did not react, as if he could not process the idea of someone thinking ahead for him. Then he nodded once barely and walked away, leaving a faint echo of gratitude in the air. Another evening he stepped into the kitchen to find her rinsing dishes. She did not hear him approach. The warm light caught a small scar on her hand, the faint curve of a healed burn. Ethan found himself staring longer than he intended. Before he could stop himself, he asked, "Does it hurt?" Lily looked up, startled that he even noticed. She opened her palm, examining the scar as if relearning it. "Not anymore, but thank you for asking." Their eyes held for more than 3 seconds. For Ethan, it felt like someone pressed a hand against his chest, steadying him just long enough to breathe. For Lily, it felt like the world tilted in a way she had not prepared for. She turned back to the sink too quickly, almost embarrassed by the intensity of that moment. The next morning, Ethan found a small, neatly folded note on the counter. "Rough night," it read, in small handwriting. "Maybe eat something before your meetings." She placed a muffin next to it, one she must have bought on her way in. He stared at it far longer than necessary, then took a bite because something about the gesture made refusing feel almost cruel. As the days passed, the small details accumulated, like drops of water wearing down stone. She adjusted the thermostat before he arrived home, knowing he always returned cold from the stress of the day. She moved the sharp-cornered decorative bowl from the table after seeing him bump into it absent-mindedly 3 times. She placed soft lighting in the hallway, because she noticed harsh light made his headaches worse. She learned his pattern of silence, distinguishing the silence of exhaustion from the silence of self-defense. Every act was subtle, but each one reached him in ways he did not understand and could not control. But the moment that truly broke something open happened late one evening. Lily was cleaning near the stove, her hair tied back loosely, when Ethan entered the kitchen looking for water. She stepped toward the counter, and the light above the stove illuminated the small burn mark on her wrist. He looked at it again, this time with fuller awareness. "How did that happen?" he asked, his voice low, almost gentle. She glanced down, brushing her thumb over the scar. "From a shift long ago, a fryer accident. Happens a lot in diners." He frowned, a rare expression, deepening the lines on his forehead. "Did it scar?" "A little." She smiled faintly. "It is an old story, though." His voice softened almost imperceptibly. "Old stories hurt, too." She froze just slightly, not because of his words, but because of the emotion beneath them. Ethan Vale did not speak gently often, but when he did, his voice carried a weight that felt like truth. Their eyes met again. No flirtation, no games, no intentions. Just two people, stripped down to the quietest parts of themselves, drawn into a moment neither of them planned. It lasted only seconds, yet felt like something important had shifted some invisible thread, pulling tighter between them. Lily was the one who stepped away, first her pulse, thrumming too fast for her comfort. She did not trust this feeling. She did not trust how easily he seemed to see through her, even when she tried not to be seen. Ethan watched her leave the kitchen, and for a moment he let himself feel the warmth she unintentionally left behind. He could not name it yet, but he felt it. The walls he had built for years, brick by brick, were beginning to crack from the inside, and it was not because she tried to knock them down. It was because she simply existed on the other side of them, with a kind of tenderness he had forgotten was possible. Ethan Vale had always known what it felt like to drown, but he had never imagined drowning could happen in silence. Without water, without violence, without drama. It could happen in the middle of a polished elevator, surrounded by mirrors, reflecting a man he barely recognized. That morning began like the others, except heavier, more brittle, as if the air itself anticipated something breaking. He had slept maybe 40 minutes, the kind of shallow, half-dreaming rest that offered no recovery. Noah had climbed into his bed during the night, whispering about a nightmare he could not describe, and Ethan held his son until the boy's breathing slowed, even though every muscle in his own body screamed for rest. At dawn, he sent Noah to school with the driver and forced himself into his suit for the meeting that would determine the future of his company. The conference room was a battlefield of voices. Raised documents slammed, investor threats layered over legal jargon. The lawsuit had grown into a monster headlines claiming negligence board members, demanding an emergency vote to remove him private equity firms, circling like sharks around a sinking ship. Ethan fought back with numbers, logic, evidence, but he could see the exhaustion in their eyes, the way they no longer believed he could steer the company out of danger. One investor slammed his fist onto the table, shouting that Ethan was costing them millions by the hour. Another sneered, accusing him of hiding financial damage. His legal counsel whispered to him that settling might be the only solution, a settlement that would make him appear guilty and destroy everything he had built. Through it all, Ethan stayed standing barely. He felt his hands tremble again, something inside him rattling loose, like screws in a collapsing building. By noon, his vision blurred around the edges. By 1:30, he could no longer hear individual voices, just a dull roaring wave that drowned every word. He excused himself, walked out of the conference room, ignoring the startled looks, and made his way to the elevator. He needed air, he needed space, he needed just one moment where the world was not demanding something from him. The elevator doors slid shut. He leaned against the mirrored wall, exhaling shakily. His reflection stared back at him with empty eyes. He barely recognized the man looking back. His chest tightened first, a small pinch, then a sharper pull, as if someone had reached inside and tried to squeeze the air out of his lungs. He tried inhaling again, but his breath hitched halfway. The elevator dropped one floor, and his knees buckled. He caught himself on the railing, gripping until his knuckles turned white. Breathe, he told himself, but the command did nothing. The walls felt closer, shrinking, pressing into him. The floor dipped beneath his feet. His heart kicked against his ribs faster and faster, in a panic he could not control. He remembered this feeling from years ago, the night he received the call about his wife. The night the doctor told him she would not wake up. His body responded the same way then too, with fear disguised as numbness. He pressed his palm to his chest, willing the ache to ease, but it deepened into a sharp, crushing pain. A sound escaped him, not a cry, not a gasp, but something raw. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. He tried stepping out and stumbled. The hallway stretched ahead like a tunnel he could not reach the end of. Someone said his name, but the voice was distant, muffled underwater. Then footsteps hurried toward him, and he felt hands gentle but urgent, one on his back, one gripping his arm, steadying him. Ethan, he heard softly, clearer this time, like a rope thrown toward a drowning man. He blinked and saw her Lily, who was not supposed to be there at this hour. Lily, who dropped the laundry basket at her feet and reached for him without hesitation. He swayed once more, and she caught him, half guiding, half holding him, as his legs threatened to give out. "Ethan, can you hear me?" she asked, kneeling slightly to meet his eye level. Her voice anchored him in a way the ground could not. He tried to answer, but the words strangled in his throat. His breath came sharp, shallow, almost painful. Panic attack, she realized immediately. Severe one. She had seen something similar in her mother once when the pain medication failed. Ethan leaned heavily against the wall, struggling to keep his gaze focused. He hated this. He hated being seen like this hated. The weakness clawing through him, but he could not stop it. His hands shook uncontrollably. His chest heaved, but he could not bring in enough air. Lily placed her hand flat against the center of his chest, her palm warm, steady, grounding him in a way that startled him so much. His breath hitched deeper. "You are safe," she murmured slowly, clearly so he could process the words. "Look at me, Ethan. You need to look at me." His eyes lifted because she asked him to, and he felt something inside him fracture further. Her face was calm, focused, but her eyes were soft, holding nothing but concern, no judgment, no fear, no hesitation. Just presence, just care, just the one thing he had been starved of. His voice cracked as he whispered, Don't look at me like this." The words came from a place he had not let anyone see since his wife died. Lily's expression broke just slightly. Heartbreak, sympathy, understanding weaving together. He had been holding everything inside for so long, he had forgotten what it felt like to be witnessed. She shook her head gently, her thumb brushing once against his sternum. "You are human," she whispered softly, and he could feel the truth of it pierce him. "You are allowed to break." He inhaled sharply, shaky, uneven but deeper. His body trembled as the pressure inside him finally cracked open years of held-together pieces straining against the weight. A sound escaped him again, this time closer to a suppressed sob, as he pressed his hand over hers, as if her palm was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. Lily kept her voice even, grounding. "Follow my breathing, okay? In and out, slowly. You are here, you are safe, you are not alone." He followed because the alternative was collapsing to the floor. Breath by breath, the tightness lessened. The elevator lights no longer spun. The world sharpened back into something he could see. His knees weakened again, but this time from release, not panic, and she steadied him, guiding him down the hall toward the lounge area where he could sit. She eased him gently onto the bench, her hand still bracing his shoulder. He bowed his head, elbows on his knees, breathing hard, trying to gather the pieces of himself that felt scattered. Lily sat beside him, not touching now but close enough for him to feel her presence, like a warm, steady lamp in a dark room. For several long moments neither spoke. Ethan stared at the floor, the polished tiles reflecting a distorted version of him, one he no longer recognized. Finally he whispered, "I can't do this much longer." The admission hung in the air like a confession ripped from a wound. Lily's voice softened even more, barely above a breath. "Then don't do it alone." He closed his eyes, and the silence around them filled with everything he had refused to feel for years. He was collapsing, yes, but for the first time, he was not collapsing unseen. And somehow that made all the difference. The night after Ethan collapsed, something in the penthouse felt different. A tension that was not sharp or dangerous but fragile, like the thin layer of ice that forms over a lake just before winter fully arrives. It was quiet, that kind of quiet that happens only after a storm, where everything is still, but the memory of chaos lingers in the walls. Ethan moved through his home slowly, like a man learning how to exist again. His limbs heavy, his chest still sore, as if every breath cost something. He had not spoken much since Lily guided him through that panic attack. But his silence now was not the same silence he carried before. Before it had been a shield, a fortress, a wall of cold stone he hid behind. Now the silence felt exposed, vulnerable, raw. After showering and changing into a soft black t-shirt, he wandered toward the kitchen, drawn by the faint sound of someone wiping counters. Lily was there, her back to him, hair in a loose braid falling over her shoulder. She moved with her usual quiet purpose, but even from behind, he could sense something different in her too. A carefulness, as though she was afraid to disturb him, yet unwilling to leave him alone. He lingered in the doorway, watching her in a way he never had before. Not out of attraction, not out of curiosity, but out of something deeper, an unspoken need to understand the person who had held him together that morning, when everything in him threatened to fall apart. Lily had one hand braced lightly on the counter, the other wiping in slow circles. She looked tired in the soft kitchen light, but there was a steadiness in her posture that reminded him of the way she kept him breathing during that panic attack, grounding him with nothing more than tone and touch. He took one step forward, and a floorboard creaked. Her head turned instantly, her eyes finding his with gentle precision. She offered a small, almost hesitant smile. "You are awake early." He nodded, clearing his throat, but words did not come easily. He stepped closer, the warm light brushing across his features, revealing the exhaustion still clinging to him. Lily watched him, a flicker of worry passing through her eyes, though she tried to hide it. Ethan leaned a hand against the counter beside her, steadying himself, not because he was dizzy, but because being near her now did something to his equilibrium, shifting his center of gravity in ways he could not explain. She resumed cleaning, but slower now, aware of his presence. After a moment, she reached up to place a jar back on the shelf. As she stretched, the hem of her shirt lifted slightly, revealing a sliver of skin, the faint curve of her waist. Ethan's gaze flicked there for a fraction of a second, before he forced himself to look away, his jaw tightening with embarrassment. He was not that man, not the kind of man who stared at a woman who worked for him, not especially someone as young and careful as Lily Hart. He turned sharply toward the sink, hoping to redirect his mind, but the sudden movement knocked a towel off the counter. It fluttered to the floor, landing near her feet. Lily bent to pick it up, and as she did, Ethan's eyes unintentionally followed, tracing the gentle arc of her motion, the delicate line of her neck, the softness in her posture. When she rose, she caught him looking not inappropriately, not with hunger, just looking, observing, searching, trying to understand her. Her breath hitched so subtly it would have gone unnoticed by anyone else, but Ethan saw it and instantly flushed with guilt, turning away so fast he nearly bumped into the cabinet. "I did not mean to," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. I was just. Lily stepped closer, closing the distance before he could finish the apology he did not need to give. "Ethan." Her voice was soft but firm enough to make him pause. She reached out and lightly touched the towel in his hand, guiding it from his grip, as if helping him remember where it belonged. When she spoke again, there was no teasing, no judgment, only truth. "If you want to see, just say it." The sentence landed between them like a spark in dry air, causing both of them to go completely still. Ethan froze every muscle, locking in place, his breath trapped halfway in his lungs. His mind raced through every possible meaning, every implication, every fear. He looked at her eyes wide, almost wounded. His voice stumbled out hoarse. "Why would you say that again, after what you thought?" Lily raised a hand, gently stopping him. She shook her head once, eyes tender, not mocking, not flirtatious, simply open in a way that unnerved him. "I did not mean that kind of seeing, not then, not now." Her tone softened even further, the words slipping out carefully as though each one mattered. "I meant you do not have to hide, not from me." Ethan inhaled sharply, something painful tightening in his chest. Lily stepped a little closer, not touching him, but close enough that he could feel her presence like warmth on cold skin. "I have watched you carry everything," she continued, her voice trembling the smallest bit. "You walk around with so much that no one else sees. Everyone looks at you like you are made of iron, but I see the parts that hurt, the parts that tremble, the parts you do not show anyone." She swallowed, pressing her lips together, before saying the truth she had held for weeks. "You look like a man who needs someone to see him, not look at him, see him." The distinction hit him like a blow to the chest. Ethan pressed his palm over his sternum instinctively, hiding the place that ached the most. Lily noticed, but she did not reach for him. She simply stood there, offering the one thing no one else had in years: permission. "You can ask," she whispered, "if you need help, if you need space, if you need someone to listen. Just say it. You do not have to drown alone." The room blurred around Ethan's emotions, rising far too quickly for him to manage. His throat tightened, tears burning behind his eyes, threatening to spill. He turned his face slightly away, ashamed of the reaction. Lily did not move. She waited. Her patience felt like mercy. Finally, he whispered, broken, trembling. "You do not understand," she replied quietly. "I think I do." He looked at her, then truly looked, and in her eyes he saw no pity, no desire to fix him, no attempt to claim him. He saw recognition. He saw loss. He saw strength. He saw someone who had been drowning once too, and knew what it was like to survive. His breath shook out a fragile exhale. Lily lowered her gaze briefly, then lifted it again, her voice steady even as her heart raced beneath her ribs. "When I said if you want to see, I meant if you want someone to see your pain. To see you, all of you, you can just say it." Ethan closed his eyes, letting the words wash over him. And for the first time in years, they did not make him feel weak. They made him feel human. The night New York decided to rain, it did not fall in violent storms or dramatic flashes of lightning. It came softly, quietly, like a confession the sky had been holding back. Thin streams of water slid down the penthouse windows, making the city lights blur into long streaks of gold and blue. Inside the Vale residence, the world felt muted, as if everything was holding its breath. Ethan stood outside Noah's bedroom door, watching Lily tuck the boy in. She moved so gently, smoothing the blanket over his small shoulders, whispering something he could not hear. Noah's eyes softened in a way Ethan had not seen in months, a tiny smile tugging at the corner of his lips as he clutched his stuffed rabbit. When she stepped out, she found Ethan leaning against the wall, arms loosely crossed, eyes darker than the hallway shadows. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the soft patter of rain against the glass. Lily clasped her hands together nervously, unsure if she should leave or stay. She had not forgotten what she told him that morning, and she could feel it lingering between them like an electric current. Ethan nodded toward the living room, but instead of going there, he lowered himself to sit on the floor in the hallway, back against the wall, long legs stretched out. Lily blinked surprised, but she followed his lead, sitting down a careful distance from him. Her knees drawn up, hands resting lightly on them. They were only 2 feet apart, yet the space felt charged, thick, warm, full of something unspoken. For a moment, Ethan just breathed slowly, deliberately, as if preparing himself for something enormous. The dim hallway light cast a faint glow across his face, and she saw the fatigue carved into every line, the quiet grief, the battles no one else had taken the time to see. He rubbed his thumbs together in a nervous rhythm she had never seen from him. "I do not know how to start," he murmured, voice low, as though afraid to break the stillness. "You do not have to plan it," Lily whispered. "You can just talk." He inhaled shakily and exhaled even shakier. His gaze fell to the floor. "My wife," he began, then stopped, as if the name caught on something sharp in his throat. After a long pause, he tried again. "My wife Anna died 2 years ago. She had an aneurysm, no warning, no pain. She was just gone." Lily's breath stalled. Ethan's voice remained steady but hollow, like he had rehearsed the words 1,000 times, but never truly spoken them. "I got the call at 3:17 in the morning, and I remember every detail of that night. The way my phone screen was too bright, the way the doctor's voice echoed, the way Noah cried and cried until his voice broke. He swallowed the memory visibly hurting him. I promised myself I would never let anything else fall apart. I promised I would carry everything so Noah did not have to, even if it killed me." Lily's eyes shimmered, though she blinked the emotion away gently. Ethan rubbed at his eyes with the heel of his palm. "I kept building the company bigger and bigger. I threw myself into work because every time I stopped moving, I felt like I was standing at her hospital bed again, watching the heart monitor go flat." The way he said it so quietly, so honestly, made Lily's chest ache. "I worked until I could not stand. I slept only when my body forced me to. I ate because I did not want Noah to see me collapse. And the more I drowned, the more everyone expected me to be unbreakable." His voice cracked subtly. "No one ever asked if I was okay. No one wanted the truth. They just wanted the man who could hold the world up." Lily shifted slightly closer, not enough to touch him, but enough that he could feel her warmth. He looked up for the first time, meeting her eyes. It was like watching a wall collapse, brick by quiet brick. "Do you know what it is like?" He whispered, "to be surrounded by people, but feel completely invisible." Her breath caught because yes, she did. Her mother's illness, her loneliness, the way she had carried grief in silence, had carved that same invisibility into her bones. Ethan pressed the back of his head against the wall, as if needing something solid to anchor him. "I have not talked about this, not once, not to anyone." His words felt like a confession and a surrender all at once. Silence stretched out for a beat, then another. Lily's fingers curled slightly against her knee. "You do not have to be alone in this," she whispered. "You do not have to carry everything until it crushes you." Ethan let out a long, unsteady breath, the kind that came from deep inside the ribcage where pain hid the longest. "What if I don't know how to stop?" he murmured. Lily looked at him fully, the hallway light reflecting softly in her eyes. "Then do not stop," she said gently. "Just slow down. Just enough to breathe. Just enough to be human." His throat worked quietly as if swallowing emotion. More rain tapped against the window, slow, rhythmic, comforting. Lily drew in a deep breath, gathering the courage to speak the truth she had carried since the day she first saw him. "You think you have to be made of steel, Ethan, that you cannot break, but steel rusts, steel bends. What you need is softness somewhere to land when the world gets too heavy." Her gaze held his. "Everyone else looks at you and sees the billionaire, the power, the headlines. But I see the man who kneels beside his son's bed and stays until the nightmares fade. The man who carries grief in silence because he does not want it to touch the people he loves. The man who would rather drown alone than let anyone else feel his weight." Ethan's breath hitched, a tiny, barely audible sound. She leaned the smallest bit closer, her voice almost a whisper. "I see you, Ethan. Not the version of you that the world demands. You. All of you." His eyes glistened helplessly, beautifully. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, the soft hum of the rain filling the space where their hearts were speaking louder than words. Then Ethan exhaled slowly, deeply, as though releasing something he had held for years. He turned his head slightly toward her, their faces inches apart, sharing the same breath, the same quiet, the same trembling vulnerability. Lily's voice lowered even further. "What else do you want to tell me?" His answer came in a whisper, so fragile she almost did not catch it. "Everything." The word trembled in the air between them, and Lily felt it sink into her like a weight and a promise. Ethan Vale had finally spoken, and nothing between them would ever be the same again. Morning came far too quickly for a night so heavy with truth. Ethan barely slept, but for the first time in years, it was not the sleeplessness that hurt him. It was the vulnerability still lingering on his skin, like warmth after rain. He kept replaying the moment Lily looked at him and said, "I see you." No one had ever said that to him, not even Anna. She loved him, but she never had. To witness him break. Lily had seen everything, and she stayed. But the world didn't care about moments like that. The world did not care about softness or human fragility. By noon, the storm outside the penthouse was no longer made of rain. It was made of cameras, microphones, and headlines. Paparazzi had crowded the building for weeks because of the lawsuit frenzy, but today was different. Today they came with a new scent in the air blood. Ethan did not know what happened until his phone buzzed nonstop, vibrating in his pocket like a warning. He had just returned from a meeting with his legal team when his assistant shoved a tablet into his hands, face-pale eyes wide. "Sir, you need to see this." A video was already playing, grainy, shaky footage, captured from the sidewalk outside his building the night he collapsed. The caption blazed in red, "Billionaire carried home by young Maid." In the video, Lily was holding his arm, helping him walk. His head bowed, his steps unsteady, his exhaustion painfully visible. The live streamer's voice echoed through the audio, gleeful, cruel. "Dude, he's literally falling apart. And look at her, she is basically his babysitter." Comments flooded the screen, laughing, mocking, dissecting Lily's appearance. Her body, her clothes, her age, her salary. One comment read, "He probably bought her." Another said, "She is definitely sleeping with him." A third screamed, "This is why the company is collapsing. He is too busy with his maid girlfriend." Ethan's blood turned cold. His heartbeat hammered against his ribs. His stomach dropped. Worse headlines followed. The falling king propped up by a girl young enough to be his daughter. Investors demand answers after Maid video goes viral. Billionaire in crisis caught with 24-year-old staff member. He nearly crushed the tablet in his grip. "Where is she?" Ethan asked, voice low-controlled, but ready to detonate. His assistant swallowed hard. "She is still upstairs, I think. She does not know yet." He moved before the sentence even finished taking the stairs, 2 at a time, because waiting for the elevator felt like wasting time he did not have. But halfway up, his phone rang again, an investor this time, one of the biggest voices in the company. Ethan answered. "Vale," the voice snapped. Before he could speak. "Fix this. Now. Remove the girl. Fire her. Make a statement. Or this company is done." Ethan's jaw clenched, tightening until pain shot along his molars. He forced each word out, slowly, icy. "She is not the problem." The investor scoffed. "Oh, really? Then why is she in every headline about our stock crash? If you do not distance yourself from that maid immediately, I am pulling $60 million in funding, and I will make sure others follow." Ethan's vision went red. Something inside him snapped, not quietly, not softly, but with enough force to tremble his entire voice. "Do you hear yourself? She is a human being, not a PR chess piece." The investor did not flinch. "She is an employee, disposable, replaceable." Ethan's voice dropped to lethal softness. "Do not ever call her that again." The investor hung up furious, but Ethan did not care. He shoved the phone into his pocket and continued upstairs, pulse-thundering rage clawing through him. When he reached the penthouse, he found Lily in the kitchen, rinsing a bowl, humming under her breath, completely unaware of the grenade the world had thrown at her. She looked peaceful, innocent, far too good for the cruelty waiting outside those walls. Ethan approached slowly, chest tight. "Lily, we need to talk." She turned at the sound of his voice, offering a small, tired smile. "Morning. Is Noah back from school yet?" Her voice was soft and hopeful. He almost hated himself for what he was about to destroy. No. He stopped. His throat burned. Something happened. Her brow furrowed her expression, shifting instantly into concern. "What is wrong? Did something happen to Noah?" No, he said quickly, stepping closer. "It is not Noah. It is you." He handed her the tablet. She dried her hands on a towel, reached for it, and pressed play. The moment she saw herself on screen, her face drained of color. Her fingers trembled. The live streamer's mocking voice filled the room. The comments flashed like knives. Lily slowly lowered the tablet, breath-shallow eyes glistening. Ethan reached for her, but she stepped back instinctively, eyes filled with shock, hurt, humiliation. "People are watching me," she whispered, barely audible. "Talking about me. Twisting everything." Her chest shook. "And it is my fault. I should not have helped you that night. I should not have been there." "Do not do that," Ethan said, voice sharp with urgency. "Do not blame yourself. I made you come home with me. I needed help. That is not something you apologize for." But Lily looked devastated. Her hands shook as she gripped the counter. "You do not understand what people say about girls like me, working class, young, alone. They think everything we do has a price. They think if a rich man looks at us, we must have asked for it." Her voice cracked. "They are calling me names." Ethan closed the distance. "Lily, listen to me. You did nothing wrong. Nothing." But Lily's eyes filled with tears she fought to hold back. "This will ruin your company. Investors will think I am a distraction. They already do." She swallowed hard, backing away further. "You need me gone." He froze, stunned, horrified. "No, Lily, you are not going anywhere." She shook her head rapidly, refusing to look at him. "You cannot protect me from this, Ethan. The world will not listen to your explanations. They will tear you apart. They will tear me apart. You cannot afford this. Your company is falling. Your reputation is hanging by a thread. And Noah, he does not deserve to deal with the rumors." Ethan stepped forward, voice rough with anger that was not directed at her, but at the world. "If anyone dares say anything to Noah, I swear." Lily flinched at the intensity in his voice. Ethan softened, immediately reaching for her again, but she stepped away. The distance between them felt like an ocean. "I cannot be the reason you lose everything," she whispered. "I cannot be the headline that ruins you." Tears finally slipped down her cheeks, though she tried to mask them. "I never wanted to be seen like this." Ethan's heart cracked wide open. "I only ever wanted to help." He had never felt so helpless. Lily wrapped her arms around herself, fighting to steady her breath. Her voice broke. "Tell me honestly, Ethan, can you keep me here without losing everything?" He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. She saw the hesitation, the pain, the conflict. It destroyed her. Her decision shaped itself in the silence. She whispered, "I will resign." Ethan felt the floor drop beneath him. "Lily, please," he choked. "Do not say that." But she stepped back, tears falling silently. "I will write the letter." Then she turned away, and his hand reached out instinctively, as if trying to catch something precious slipping from his grasp. The world had crashed in, and this time Ethan Vale did not know if he could hold it together. Ethan did not sleep. He did not sit. He did not breathe properly. The world outside was collapsing again. Headlines multiplying, investor threats exploding his board, demanding immediate action. But none of it mattered, because the only thing echoing in his mind was Lily's trembling voice saying, "I will resign." The sentence replayed like a bruise. He kept pressing even though it hurt. By late evening, the penthouse felt painfully silent. Noah was at his aunt's house for the night, away from the chaos, and Ethan had spent the entire day in meetings that felt more like interrogations. But the moment he stepped back into his home, he knew something was wrong. The lights in the kitchen were on. The air felt different too, still too final. He walked slowly toward the counter, and there it was, a white envelope, his name written on it in Lily's small, careful handwriting. His fingers shook as he picked it up. The paper felt warm, as if she had held it too long before placing it there. He slid his thumb under the flap and unfolded the note. "Mr. Vale, thank you for everything. I am sorry for the trouble I caused. This is the right choice. Please take care of Noah. Lily." No explanation, no request, no goodbye. Just a clean cut. A wound pretending to be neat. Ethan stared at the handwriting until the letters blurred. Something inside his chest cracked open, a quiet, painful tearing like fabric, ripping at the seams. He whispered her name once, twice, as if saying it could summon her back. But she was gone. She had resigned exactly the way she lived, quietly, gently, without demanding anything, not even the chance to explain. He did not think. He just moved. He grabbed his coat, his phone, his keys, and bolted out of the penthouse. He did not care about the paparazzi shouting his name from below the building. He did not care about cameras flashing. He did not care about headlines or consequences or investors. He cared about one thing: finding her before she disappeared from his life completely. He pressed the elevator button repeatedly until he realized the weight was killing him, so he turned and sprinted down the stairs, 2 at a time, nearly stumbling from exhaustion and urgency. He reached the lobby just as the doorman looked up, startled. "Sir, are you all right?" Ethan's voice came out breathless. "Did Lily leave?" The doorman blinked, processing the desperation in Ethan's expression before nodding slowly. "Yes, sir, about 10 minutes ago." She looked upset. She went toward Fifth Avenue. Ethan was already out the door before the sentence ended. The night air hit him like a slap, sharp, cold, bracing. But he welcomed it because he needed anything that could cut through the panic gripping his chest. He scanned the crowded sidewalk, ignoring the stares, the murmurs, the recognition. He walked fast, then ran faster down the block, weaving between people, calling her name into the moving tide of strangers. "Lily. Lily, wait." But no one turned. He checked the crosswalks, the bus stops, every corner, until finally he saw her. She was walking quickly, head down, coat pulled tight around her, as if trying to make herself smaller. Her braids swung with each hurried step. Ethan's breath caught in his throat with a force that hurt. He shouted her name louder this time. "Lily." She froze. Slowly, almost fearfully, she turned. Her eyes were wide, startled, reflecting both confusion and hurt. Ethan walked toward her quickly, almost stumbling from how hard his heart was beating. When he reached her, he stopped just inches away, chest-heaving voice breaking. "Do not leave. Please do not walk away." Lily's throat worked as she swallowed her emotions. Eyes dropping to the sidewalk, Ethan took a breath, fighting the rising ache inside him. "I cannot lose you." His voice cracked on the last word. Lily blinked hard, trying to steady herself. "You have an entire company to save, Ethan. You have Noah. You have a life that does not need someone like me complicating it." He shook his head fiercely, stepping closer. "You think you complicate my life? Lily, you are the only part of it that makes sense." She looked up sharply, tears rising again. "You do not mean that." "Yes, I do." Ethan's voice was low, intense, trembling with truth. "For weeks I have been barely functioning, and you were the only person who saw me, really saw me." He exhaled shakily. "You looked at me like I was still human. No one has done that since Anna died." The confession broke something in her. Lily's voice was barely audible. "Ethan, I never wanted to be the reason you suffered more." He stepped even closer, their foreheads almost touching, though he did not dare to actually bridge the space. "You could never hurt me. Losing you would." She looked away, her voice shaking. "The world is cruel. It will keep twisting everything. They will not stop. People at your level cannot be seen with people like me without paying a price." Ethan took her hands before she could pull them back. His grip was gentle but firm, as if afraid she might evaporate. "I do not care. I care about Noah. I care about the company, but I care about you, too, more than I should." Lily's breath stuttered. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Ethan lifted one of her hands to his chest, placing her palm over his heartbeat. It raced under her touch, frantic, desperate, painfully real. "Do you feel that? That is what happens when I think of you walking away." Lily's eyes glistened, and she whispered brokenly, "I cannot be your burden." Ethan shook his head slowly. "You are the only person who makes the weight feel lighter. You are the only one who makes me feel like I can breathe." And then the final blow. Noah appeared at the entrance of the building, having returned, early tears streaming down his face, because he must have overheard the chaos upstairs. "Daddy, Lily." He ran straight to Lily, wrapping his small arms around her legs, burying his face into her coat. Lily froze startled, then instinctively knelt, hugging the little boy tightly. Noah whispered through sobs, "Do not go. Please do not go." Ethan's voice softened, breaking. "Noah sees you too, the way I do." Lily's tears finally fell silently down her cheeks as she held Noah close. Ethan crouched beside them, his hand brushing Noah's back, then Lily's shoulder. His voice was barely a whisper. "Stay, not for me, for us." Lily closed her eyes, trembling from the weight of it all. And in that moment, with the city roaring around them, and Noah clinging to her like she was the last safe place he knew, she realized something Ethan had known all along. Leaving would break them far more than staying ever could. 2 months later, the world still talked about Ethan Vale, but not in the way they once did. The headlines began to shift slowly, subtly, almost reluctantly. They no longer called him the falling king. They called him something else. The man who turned the crash around. The CEO who chose humanity over power. The billionaire who learned to breathe again. And every time Ethan read those words, he felt the same quiet disbelief settle into his chest, because he knew exactly when things began to change. The night a 24-year-old maid looked him in the eyes and said, "I see you." The world outside their penthouse kept spinning, full of noise, demands, pressure. But inside, something softer had taken root. Something that did not ask for explanations or perfection. It asked only for honesty, patience, presence. Lily stayed, not as a maid, not as a scandal, not as a pity story. She returned as something new. Ethan insisted she choose her own role, and she chose one that surprised him. Part-time nanny to Noah. part-time student funded entirely by the scholarship program Ethan created in her mother's name. The Heart Initiative, a fund supporting young women working multiple jobs while pursuing higher education. When Lily first heard the name, she cried quietly into her coffee cup, while Ethan pretended not to see because he knew she hated being watched while breaking. Noah adored her even more, now running into her arms every afternoon like she was sunlight returning to a dim room. And Ethan. Well, Ethan changed slowly, carefully. He began sleeping more than 3 hours a night. He stopped skipping meals. He took breaks, real breaks. Sometimes he would walk into the kitchen and find Lily studying at the counter, hair falling around her face, concentration furrowing her brows, and something warm quiet settled in his chest at the sight. Sometimes she caught him looking, and he would glance away shyly in a way no billionaire should ever look, but he could not help it. The company changed too. Ethan rebuilt it with new leadership, new priorities, new boundaries. He no longer carried every burden alone. He fired the board members who tried to weaponize Lily's existence. He publicly defended her during a press conference, and the clip went viral worldwide. A reporter had asked Mr. Vale, "Do you regret hiring the maid who caused all this chaos?" Ethan did not flinch. Lily Hart did not cause anything, he answered firmly. She saved more than you will ever know. The room stunned into silence. Noah watched the clip repeatedly, with the bright, proud smile only children could make. Life did not magically become easy, but it became bearable, honest, warmer. One late afternoon, golden light spilled into the living room, soft and slow, settling over everything with the tenderness of a final scene in a film. Lily sat on the floor beside Noah, helping him color a rocket ship. Her hair was loose today, falling over her shoulders, the braid undone, because Noah liked to play with the strands when he needed comfort. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching them without speaking, soaking in the moment as if afraid it would dissolve if he blinked. The sight of them hit him every time with the same force, a quiet ache mixed with gratitude. He walked closer, leaning against the wall, arms crossed but relaxed. "How is the masterpiece coming?" he asked, voice softer than usual. Noah grinned proudly, lifting the paper. "We are making space." Lily laughed gently, brushing a crayon smudge off Noah's cheek. "We are making a lot of things," she said without looking up. Ethan's eyes softened. "Yes, you are." He watched them a moment longer, then sat down on the couch, sinking into the cushions, letting the exhaustion of the week melt just a little. For years his penthouse had felt cold empty, echoing with the ghosts of what he had lost. But now it felt like a home again, not because of furniture or lighting or expensive renovations, because of them. Lily glanced up, catching his gaze. "You are staring again." Her tone was teasing but gentle. Ethan looked away quickly, his ears warming. "Maybe," he murmured. She rose from the floor, dusting off her jeans, and moved toward him, stopping when only a foot separated them. For a moment, neither spoke. The sunset cast soft light across her face, making her look almost unreal. Ethan lifted his eyes to hers. She looked at him steadily, quietly, the way she always had, as if she saw the man beneath every mask he had ever worn. "Lily," he said softly, "there is something I have wanted to tell you." She waited, patient, heartbeat steady. "You once said, if you want to be seen, just say it." His voice trembled slightly. "Well, I want you to know something. I see you too." Her breath caught the smallest, sweetest sound. He continued, voice thick with sincerity. I see the woman who sacrificed everything for her mother. I see the girl who worked 3 jobs and still found a way to be kind. I see the strength you pretend you do not have. I see your fears, your hope, your heart. I see all of it, and I am grateful for every part. Lily's eyes glistened, filling slowly with emotion. She did not bother to hide. She stepped closer, kneeling in front of him, so their faces were level. Her voice trembled but did not break. I think she whispered, "You were never falling, Ethan. You were just waiting for someone to catch you." He exhaled a soft, shaky breath, as though those words loosened something buried deep within him. "And you," she whispered, placing her hand gently over his heart, "caught me too." His eyes closed for half a second, overwhelmed. When he opened them, she was still there, anchored, calm, steady. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear fingers, lingering for a moment longer than necessary. Her eyes fluttered gently at the touch. Ethan said quietly, "If you ever want to be seen, just say it." Lily smiled, watery, glowing. I think she murmured, "You are already seeing me." They stayed like that for a breath, then another suspended in a moment that felt like the end and the beginning of something new. Not rushed, not dramatic, simply honest. When Lily finally leaned her forehead against his, he let out a breath that sounded like relief. The falling king had not fallen after all. He had simply been waiting for the woman who would help him stand again. If this story reached you in a quiet moment, if it made you pause, breathe, or feel something you have not felt in a long time, then let this be the place where you stay for a little while. Stories like this one are not just written for entertainment. They are written for people who know what it feels like to carry too much for too long, for people who pretend to be strong, even when the weight is unbearable, for people who love deeply, even when life has not always been kind. If Ethan and Lily's journey touched your heart, then you are exactly the kind of soul we write for here. And if you are still reading now, then you are part of this story too. So take a second, tell us where you are watching from. Your city, your state, your country, your corner of the world. Someone out there will read your comment and realize they are not alone either. And if you want more stories like this, more emotional journeys, more late-night confessions, more healing, more love, more tenderness, more powerful, slow burn moments, then make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter. Every click, every comment, every share helps this community grow and helps us bring you the stories you deserve. Stories that remind you that even broken hearts can find a home again. Tell us in the comments who you connected with most in this story. Was it Ethan fighting battles no one could see? Was it Lily trying to stay gentle in a world that expects her to be silent? Was it Noah searching for safety in the people who love him? Or maybe it was all three. Share your thoughts. Share your favorite moment. Share the line that hit you hardest. And if this story made you tear up even a little, that is okay. Healing does not always look like strength. Sometimes it looks like softness. Sometimes it looks like finally letting yourself feel. We have so many more stories coming: billionaire romance, single dad healing arc, strangers, to soulmates, heartbreak to hope, modern love with real depth. And trust me, the next ones will take your breath away in ways you are not expecting. If you want more love, more emotion, more stories that understand you, then make sure you stay with us. This is your space, your community, your little corner of the internet, where love always finds a way, even when the world makes it hard. So subscribe, leave a comment, share the story with someone who might need it tonight, and remember one thing: you deserve stories that see you just as much as Ethan and Lily learn to see each other. You deserve to be held by words that make the world feel a little softer, a little warmer, a little more possible. Thank you for being here. Thank you for reading. And thank you for letting this story touch your heart. The next one is already on its way,